Good morning, darlings. I'm going to start this video with a disclaimer. I feel like I'm more like a Hollywood sort of person, or like one of those TV series. I'm not. I mean, I could be, but I'm not. Anyway, what was I doing? Oh yes, disclaimer. Right, the following video, and this is for serious, guys. This is for real. The following video discusses the deaths and suicides in Romeo and Juliet and the Catholic beliefs about them both. Now, I know that for at least a couple of you, you might find doing this difficult. I know that some of you have gone through some stuff and that you might find this more challenging or upsetting or uncomfortable or difficult to deal with, especially on your own. So, if this is the case and you genuinely don't think that you can look at this video on your own at home, then you need to email me to tell me why, and I'll make a note of it and we'll study it during a lunchtime when we return to school. It is a necessary component of your understanding of the play. It's not necessary for the upcoming assessment, but it may be necessary for your GCSE. So if you don't feel that this is something that you can do on your own and you need the extra support, we will arrange lunchtime. I'll put it on pause and stuff, and you can come in and we will go through it then. If this is you, you need to email me now and not look at the rest of this video. However, if this is not you, then you do need to do the work, obviously. However, if this is you, but you think, oh, I'm going to give it a go, but then you think, actually, do you know what, I can't, and you get so far through, but then you can't deal, then again, you must email me because we have to go through this at some point. Okay, so yeah, that's your disclaimer. This is your final chance to think whether this was for you or not, and email me if it isn't. Okay, let's move on then. Right, so there are deaths in Romeo and Juliet, quite a few of them. Shakespeare liked killing off characters. So please do your starter for 10, as you should spend 10 minutes on this. You need to write down all the instances, all the events where death takes place, all the instances is the word, and you need to note their location. So you'll have to go through the electronic version of your play. So it's in the shared area. You should have it already. The location, so the act and the scene, please. This is why I have a Roman numeral clock on my wall in the classroom, so that you guys can get used to Roman numerals. I need you to write down the quote or quotes where the death happens, and then I need you to write down any method which has been used. Now, you can do this in a chart, you can do this in a table, you can do this in a revision clock. It's entirely up to you. You can do it in a list, but you have to spend 10 minutes on this, please. You might need a little bit more if you're going really in depth, but it should only take 10 minutes. So I'm going to assume you've done that and then move on to the next slide. But you guys can pause the video first. Okay, right, so there are distinctions between to kill and to murder. These are two different verbs, okay? To kill and to murder. So I've put the crucifix in the middle because we're going to be talking about Catholic beliefs about these two things. Because Romeo and Juliet were Catholic. Friar Lawrence was a Catholic priest. He was a monk. Italy was a Catholic country, and so it's important that we understand that these people, these characters, are coming at their life with a Catholic perspective. Okay, they would have been brought up Catholic, they would have been baptized, they would have been confirmed Catholic, they would live their life Catholic. They go to confession on a regular basis. Look at Juliet, she goes to confession on a regular basis. This is what they do. Okay, this is the point where if we're in the classroom, you guys usually ask me whether I go to confession, and the answer is yes, although probably not as much as I should. So, to kill and to murder. So to start off with then, before we get into the Catholic definitions and what they believe, I want you to consider what the difference is between these two things. So if you want to make a chart in your book, an A4 page, split it down the middle, put a title on each side, one to kill, one to murder, and then just a couple of notes, a couple of keywords about what you think falls under that category, to kill versus to murder. Okay, go ahead and do that now and pause the video and then come back. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you've done that and you're not just waiting for me to fill you in for the stuff. So to kill then and to murder, I hope you've got some different definitions and I hope you weren't struggling too much. So to kill then, we'll have a look at to kill first. Okay, so to kill means that you have a legitimate defense. So this is taken from what's called the Catechism of the Catholic Church. This is different than the Bible. It's sort of a how to live your life if you are Catholic book. It's really thick. I'm looking at my copy now, and it's a good 2 inches thick, and it's a big, heavy book as well. And so they've got 3 paragraphs that we're going to pay attention to, and it says legitimate defence. And I'm going to read out this on the screen because there's quite a lot in it. So the legitimate defence of persons and societies is not an exception to the prohibition against the murder of the innocent that constitutes an intentional killing. The act of self-defence can have a double effect: the preservation of one's own life and the killing of the aggressor. The one is intended, the other is not. Because as Catholics, you have a sacred duty to protect your own life. And if that means acting in self-defence, then so be it. It's why armies are still allowed to go to war, okay? And then it says, love towards oneself remains a fundamental principle of morality. Therefore, it is legitimate to insist on respect for one's own right to life. Someone who defends his life or hers is not guilty of murder, even if he is forced to deal with his aggressor a lethal blow. So if it's, I don't know, a fight between you and somebody else, it's called self-defense. If you accidentally kill them, if it's a choice between you and them, Catholics say you have to insist on respect for your own right to life. Okay, if a man in self-defense uses more than necessary violence, so if you could have incapacitated your attacker doing something less than killing them, then it is unlawful. It's this thing where I used to work. We used to have these 3 criteria for if we if we needed to restrain someone or not. It's called intent, potential, and willingness to disengage. And there was a farmer years and years and years ago who shot an intruder who'd come into his home in the middle of the night. He shot him with a shotgun and he shot him in the chest. If he'd shot him in the back, because of those 3 criteria, the intent, potential, and willingness to disengage, because if the man was if the burglar, if the robber was faced away from him, he didn't have the potential to kill him, and he was willing to disengage because he was walking away. However, because the man was walking towards him, he had the intent, he had the potential to do him some serious harm, and he wasn't willing to disengage because he was still walking towards him. So these are sort of the 3 criteria that people look at when they look at situations where it's a self-defense act. Okay, so I'll read this bit again because I went on a tangent, but it was really useful, I promise. So if a man or woman in self-defense uses more than necessary violence, intent, potential, and willingness to disengage, it will be unlawful. So it's then murder, so you can go to prison. Whereas if he repels force with moderation, say you just punch him in the face and knock him out for a bit instead of killing him, his defense will be lawful. So you can incapacitate your attacker without going overboard, is essentially what it's saying. Because if you go too far, then you're going to go to prison. Nor is it necessary for salvation that a man omit the act of moderate self-defense to avoid killing the other man, since one is bound to take more care of one's own life than of another's. This means that you won't necessarily not get into heaven if you couldn't act in moderation, if you couldn't withhold deadly force. If it meant that, say Mercutio punched Tybalt, but Tybalt was still coming at him with a sword, Mercutio would have been within his rights to use his sword as well, etc., etc. Okay? It doesn't mean necessarily that he wouldn't get into heaven. This is the Catholic perspective. Okay? So that is to kill then. And then if we look at to murder, Catholics believe that we cannot be united with God unless we freely choose to love him. But we cannot love God if we sin gravely against him, against our neighbour, or against ourselves. He who does not love remains in death. Anyone who hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. Our Lord warns us that we shall be separated from him if we fail to meet the serious needs of the poor and the little ones who are his brethren, brothers. Okay, so this means if you go out and you just murder somebody, there's no act of aggression, there's no self-defense, you just go and kill somebody, you're going to hell, essentially, because you've permanently distanced yourself from God. Okay? So Catholics believe that murdering for the sake of it is absolutely unacceptable. Not only will you go to prison, but you will go to hell. But killing, if there's a legitimate defense, that is lawful because you've got to protect yourself and you're not necessarily automatically going to hell. So if you want to make some notes about these things, my darlings, please do so. Please do so in your books. I'm going to try and squidge these down so that you can see both, so that you can copy these, like take notes and stuff for your books. I'm going to squidge this down a bit, guys. I hope you can still read it. So you can go ahead and pause the video and grab this down. Okay, off you go. Okay, so what you need to do now then, and there are 3 steps to this, and this is your step 3, this is your stretch and challenge. So examine closely the fight scenes in the play. So we're thinking about the one in Act 1 and the one in Act 3, really. We're not thinking about, well, I mean, you could look at the one between Romeo and Paris at the very end as well, but it's those 3 mainly. So step 1 then. And you will essentially, you'll write this up in an essay after you've made these notes, after you've decided, after you've accomplished all these bits, you'll write this up in an essay. So it should be detailed. Okay, so step 1, to determine, work out who is the guilty party in starting each of the altercations or each of the fights in the play, and use a quote to support your decision. So you may have to find the death and work backwards from each death to find the cause, where it started. You may have to be a bit of a detective. Step 2, explain how this has been presented, the methods, by Shakespeare, and what he was trying to convey, achieve, or provoke in the audience. What was he trying to make the audience think? How did he do it? What methods did he use? Was there a rhyming couplet? Was there a shared rhyme? Was there a shared... What was there? Was there a metaphor? Were there insults? What were there? And then what was he trying to do? Why did he do that? And then step 3, this is the stretch and challenge bit. Explore how this might contravene Catholic beliefs and laws about what an audience member of the time might think about it. So don't forget, we've said this before, the people at the time were mostly Church of England. However, it had only been 60 years or so since everyone was Catholic. And it just, so it could have been less than that, depending on how old they were and stuff when Mary was queen or whatever. So in Elizabethan times, it was mostly Church of England. However, there were still some Catholics. However, most people would still be aware of Catholic beliefs because quite a few of them were still held by people who were Church of England, Protestant people. So it's not like they made a new church and went, oh yeah, let's kill everyone, it's fine. No, they didn't. So what you need to think about is how these things then might apply or go against these things here. So this bit here, the bit where it says, he who does not love remains in death. Anyone who hates his brother is a murderer. Now, brother there doesn't mean the child of your parents. It means another human man or a human woman or a human being. Okay, so when Tybalt, for example, says, peace, I hate the word as I hate hell, all Montagues and thee, he says he hates quite a lot. So when he's fighting at the beginning, we need to think, is he killing with justification because of he's been provoked, or is he trying to murder? The same with Mercutio and Romeo and stuff like that in Act 3. We need to look at that, okay? And we need to look at how Shakespeare has presented these ideas and what that does in terms of either support or go against whatever it is that we've just looked at. Is it murder or is it killing? Okay, this is a hard task. You're going to have to spend a lot of time on this. I would do your research before you start writing this up. I would absolutely make notes. I would find some quotes that you're planning to. I'd do a little plan if it was me. I'd do a little plan of my essay about what I wanted to say. And you could, of course, make sure that you're writing these down for each point that you're making, but it doesn't have to be in this order. You can mix and match. You can switch them around a bit. It doesn't, I don't mind. Okay? So that's your first task. So go ahead and pause the video and do that. I am going to do this. There is another task coming up in a second, but I am going to do this all as one video. So it will be long and you will have several things to do. This would have covered a few lessons had we been in the classroom, but it's all the same topic. So I just want it all in one video for you so you're not getting lost. Okay, so pause the video. Go and do that, then get a snack and go pop to the loo, wash your hands, and then get a drink and then come back. Okay, if you need any help with this, by the way, you can always email me and tweet me or ask for help. You know, smoke signals. Well, not smoke signals, I won't see them. Or carry a pigeon. It's not likely to happen. Okay, but you know how to get hold of me. Okay, so I will assume then that you've done that, and then we'll move on. Okay, so suicide then. The task is, using your knowledge of what Catholics believe about killing and murder, write down what you might think they believe about suicide. Okay, you all you know about so far, as far as I'm aware, unless you know outside of the classroom, but you know about murder and you know about killing. So please use those things to think about what Catholics might believe about suicide. Go ahead and pause the video and do that now and then come back. Okay, so I'm going to assume you've done that. Suicide then, and this is again taken from the Catechism. It says, so this is a big long list, so I'm going to go through this again. It says, suicide. Everyone is responsible for his or her life before God who has given it to him or her. It is God who remains the sovereign master of life. We are obliged, this is Catholics, so if you're Catholic, you're supposed to follow this, you're supposed to believe it, and we do. We are obliged to accept life gratefully and preserve it for his honour and the salvation of our souls. We are stewards, not owners of the life God has entrusted to us. So if you don't know what a steward is, think about the rugby and the people in the high-vis jackets who show you to your seats. That's a steward. It's like a custodian. It's like a guide. It's like somebody who looks after, okay? It is not ours to dispose of, okay? It means that essentially what Catholics believe is it is not your life to choose to end. Suicide contradicts the natural inclination of the human being to preserve and perpetuate his life. It is gravely contrary to the just love of self. It likewise offends love of neighbour because it unjustly breaks the ties of solidarity with family, nation, and other human societies to which we continue to have obligations. Meaning that if someone commits suicide, it's the family, your country, or your community, and we have an obligation to the people. We're a social creature essentially, and it hurts other people. Okay, suicide is contrary to love for the living God. If suicide is committed with the intention of setting an example, especially to the young, it also takes on the gravity of scandal. Now, that's not something that you find in the newspapers. It's a different definition. Voluntary cooperation in suicide is contrary to the moral law. So when we look at Romeo, who goes to the apothecary for the poison that he's going to buy, the apothecary, could be falling under this. It could fall under this statement here. Grave psychological disturbances, anguish, or grave fear of hardship, suffering, or torture can diminish the responsibility of the one committing suicide. So essentially what this means is if someone is going through one of these things, then perhaps they are not as responsible for they're not as responsible for committing the act as somebody who isn't going through one of these things. Okay. And then finally, it says, we should not despair of the eternal salvation of persons who have taken their own lives. By ways known to him alone, God can provide the opportunity for salutary repentance. The church prays for the persons who have taken their own lives. So it's not up to us to say whether people who have committed suicide end up in heaven or hell. Catholic people know it's a risk, but we need to think about what their state of mind was like. If their state of mind wasn't what is known as compos mentis, then perhaps their ability to be held responsible is diminished, is essentially what this is saying. So what's this got to do with the world of work, I hear you ask, since the world of work task, the little button is down there. It says logical thinking and building on existing knowledge is a key skill for all careers and jobs, no matter what you do. If you can develop this now by training your mind to automatically think of the next step and your next steps, hashtag metaphor, you will be much easier to, your next steps will be much easier to take, metaphor, and you'll be much quicker to take them. So thinking about training your brain is much easier when you're your age than when you're my age and old and decrepit. So this is all about thinking about the next step. So hopefully you came up with something along these lines. If you didn't, and you think something different, then okay, but this is what Catholics believe. Okay, Catholics believe you shouldn't commit suicide. Your life is, you are the custodian of your life. You don't own it. It goes against everything that God has said about making sure you preserve your life, making sure that your life is sacred. However, if you are suffering grave psychological disturbances, anguish, or grave fear of hardship, suffering, or torture, you could be less responsible for the actions that you then undertake. And we shouldn't worry, because God is essentially love, according to Catholics, and so there might be a way for the soul to be in heaven. This is what Catholics believe. Okay, right. So our task then knowing all of that, what might an audience member think of Romeo and Juliet's decisions to kill themselves, knowing Catholic beliefs as they did? Now, step one, we need to examine the motives and actions of both the characters and find quotes to support their feelings. We need to examine any methods used by Shakespeare to heighten the emotions or the motives, or to encourage the audience to sympathise with the two characters. And step three is to come to a conclusion and include your own thoughts. Don't use I in an essay. Third person, formal writing, please. About what an audience member might think about the last events of the play. This is a big task. This will take you a long time. However, you can research this. This is not going to be from your memory. You can research this. You can back it up. If you can go back and look at different things on the video. You can email me or tweet me if you want any further clarification. There's stuff online that you can find as well. There's loads, okay? So that is the end of this video. If you are struggling, you can email me or tweet me. If you are struggling, you can ask your friends, but don't copy. I will be able to spot it. As per usual, guys, for all these tasks, please make sure that you're submitting them via the submissions folder in the shared area on the remote access, or if you can't get access to the shared area, that you are writing them in your books, taking a quick photo and bobbing it over to me so that I can see that you're along the right lines. Stay safe, wash your hands, like and subscribe. Jokes, obs. Any issues, you know where I am. Miss you.